He got manager money too. No, I'm just kidding. Don't take that to heart. All right. Nonetheless, the show will go on today. Happy Friday to you all. We're starting to feel it's starting to feel like football weather a little bit. Appropriate actually, because tonight will be the final Friday Football Fever officially of the regular season, of the season, I should say. We are still going to show playoff games next week, but we don't know how many teams are going to be left standing. So this is the last week of all the bells and whistles of Friday Football Fever. But it is the second round of the playoffs here in Tennessee. Mississippi getting the playoffs started tonight. We have a fantastic game for our game of the week. It is a rivalry game, Germantown versus Collierville.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a good one, Matt. I mean, these teams, like we've talked about so many times, the rivalry, they're so close. And I know you've covered this game before.
Yeah, so I covered this game earlier in the season. It was the wettest high school football game I have ever shot in my life. You can kind of see in this video right here, just the puddles on the field. And when I was shooting in a certain direction, like just the way the rain was coming sideways was wild. So Collierville won this game at Germantown. This was in late September, 15-12. You can kind of tell in this clip right here just how bad the rain is. I mean, just all over my lens and everything. So with that in mind, Collierville won that game 15-12. Collierville is home tonight. I talked to both head coaches yesterday, Joe Riccone at Collierville, Gene Robinson at Germantown, about how much can you take away from that game just given how crazy the conditions were. That's what they had to say.
Very close game. Could have went either way. We got up early. They came back in the end. Really, I mean, the game could have went either way. So I think, sure, the weather. I think the weather was a factor, but it was a factor for both teams. And I think, some people say, well, this team, it may affect it more than the other team. I don't really believe that. I think both teams have to adjust. I think we both did adjust.
I definitely think you can take things away from that game. Both teams were physical. It's going to be a physical bout, just like any region A6A bout, it's going to be physical, so we're looking forward to it.
All right, so looking forward to that tonight. That game, like I said, be played at Collierville. You are our Houston beat reporter at this point.
Yeah, at this point I am. I think it's been there 5 times now this year. I mean, rightfully so, defending state champs, a lot on the line. Bartlett coming into town, going to be a lot different than last week. Houston kind of cruised first week, coming off that Collierville game where it was just fireworks like crazy. But again, we talked about it yesterday. It is all about the quarterback for Houston. If Chandler Day plays, they are, I think, if not the favorite, to kind of win it all again.
Yeah, I would say so.
If not, you got his younger brother, Cannon, who's good.
Freshman, right?
Freshman.
Yeah.
I mean, you can only expect so much. So definitely going to be a much tougher test than last week because Bartlett is a good team.
You said that you could see Cannon Day, Chandler's younger brother, you could see him improving throughout that game,
Major steps from the Collierville game where he was thrusted into action and then the first round of the playoffs. Then again, competition took a big drop. But again, maybe he needed that kind of game to just, I don't know, take the training wheels off a little bit and kind of get this offense moving again because they were throwing it a lot more than they were in the Collierville game 2 weeks prior.
Something else I'm going to throw out there. This is not any sort of official reporting. It's just me kind of analyzing the situation. Something else to think about with Chandler Day. I know he's a tough kid. I know he's going to want to play if at all possible. Remember, he is not playing college football. He is a commit to the University of Tennessee for baseball. So obviously with that in mind, you're not going to do anything crazy as far as risking his future playing SEC baseball. So, if it's reasonable and he can play without further risking himself, I'm sure he'll be out there. But if there's any doubt in your mind that playing could potentially jeopardize that future, don't do it.
Yeah.
The other game tonight that we're going to get is going to be Haywood taking on Melrose in Orange Mound. Melrose playing really good ball right now. We've talked about their weapons before. Ryan Brown, Jamarion Morrow. So, looking forward to that. You will catch me at Collierville High School with a live preview on Action News 5 at 6, and we'll have all the highlights tonight on Friday Football Fever at 10. All right, one of my favorite transitions, and you've nailed this one time before, from football to football. Right? Unfortunately, though, this is not a good update for soccer in the Memphis area. Obviously, the news that kind of took the whole city and region by storm and by shock earlier this week, 901 FC transferring their franchise, essentially their charter, their franchise rights, whatever you want to call it, to Santa Barbara. And Santa Barbara will begin play in the USL, the United Soccer League, in 2026. The FC has played their last game in Memphis, and I know when I saw that the other night, I was pretty shocked.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it seemed like to a lot of fans it came out of nowhere, but I was looking back on stuff yesterday, and one of the first stories I did when I came here in March was about the stadium
Yep.
and how the USL wanted every team to have their own stadium by 2025.
Yeah.
And there just weren't any. There were always those projections. There were always those renderings that everyone saw over at Liberty Park. And there was just never any actual movement. The money came in for sports stadiums, and a lot of it did go to the FedEx Forum for the Grizzlies and the Tigers. So I think at the end of the day, the city made a decision that the FedEx Forum was more important than keeping 901 FC. And you couldn't, I guess what everyone didn't realize was you couldn't keep both. You know what I mean?
And plus, AutoZone Park needs renovations as well.
Exactly.
I think the thing that was surprising was just, being around the team the last couple weeks of the regular season and before their one playoff game this year, none of management, head coach Stephen Glass, the players, none of them were moving like they thought something like this was on the horizon. Now, obviously, maybe they would have made that obvious, but it was surprising. I think we knew about the stadium situation and that, they might be on borrowed time. I think most of us figured they might have had one more year before that came to a head. And, I've seen a lot of people, angry this week at, mainly Robert Parra, the Grizzlies owner, just, given the fact that, it is what it is. The Grizzlies played hardball with the city of Memphis. They got $350 million from the state of Tennessee to disperse amongst their sports stadiums. And most of it ended up going to FedEx Forum, another chunk going to Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium to upgrade, AutoZone Park, and this theoretical soccer stadium at Liberty Park or wherever left out of the equation. And listen, I get it. Whenever a mega billionaire like Robert Parra doesn't spend his own money to upgrade FedEx Forum, people are going to be upset, and I understand it. But to the thought of people asking why can the Grizzlies bully the smaller teams in the city, and why can they move like this? Because they're the most important team in the city.
Yeah, I mean,
because they're the most important team in the city. Because here's the reality: I would say the pecking order in some order goes Grizzlies, Tiger basketball, Tiger football, and then 901 FC and the Redbirds and whatnot. And don't get me wrong, I love covering. I'm not even a huge soccer fan. I loved covering 901 FC because I think it was a great group of guys. I think they were well run. It was cool to see the atmosphere at AutoZone Park downtown. Same thing with the Redbirds. I really enjoy covering the Redbirds. I'm a Cardinals fan. I've been a baseball fan my entire life. I enjoy it. The facts are the facts. And of those top three teams, you have one pro team and a relatively big Division I program.
Especially when it comes to basketball.
Right. Guess which one of those can relocate if they want to? The pro team.
Yeah.
And you think you've seen the reaction to 901 FC leaving this week?
Oh my! You don't even want.
What do we think the reaction would be the day the Memphis Grizzlies theoretically leave town? Which hopefully never happens, and I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. But you've seen the reaction this week and how upset people are.
It'd be so bad.
It would be legitimately incredibly detrimental to the city of Memphis on many fronts. Don't get me wrong. I am sad that 901 FC is leaving. I wish it didn't happen. But to people asking why the city just basically caved into the Grizzlies, because the Grizzlies have the leverage. And if the city doesn't, then they can pack up their stuff and leave at the end of the lease in 2028. And they could go to any number of cities that would gladly take them in.
Anybody would take them.
And this is where also, I imagine Robert Parra is probably looking at this. The team is in one of the smallest I think the smallest market in the NBA. And with that, you have to look at it and say, we're making less money here than we could in, again, a Nashville, whatever. Just plug in any. I'm not trying to get people riled up. It's a reality of the situation. There are bigger markets out there where the team would make more money off any number of fronts. And he's probably looking at it, well, if I'm going to stay here, then the city's going to have to prove to me how valuable they think we are.
Yeah.
And how much they really want us. And listen, is it tough? Is it cutthroat? Yeah. Is that professional sports? Is that big-time business? Yeah.
That's also just like life in general.
It's tough, but you know what? Nothing would be more detrimental to the city of Memphis than losing the Memphis Grizzlies.
And they will do anything in their power.
Period. Especially in a time right now where the Grizzlies brand, given how good we think they are and the star power at the head of it, they have one of the most marketable athletes in the world, I think, period, right now, in Ja Morant. Losing them anytime in the near future, given where they are right now, would be incredibly heartbreaking. So it is what it is. I wish 901 FC didn't have to leave, but this discussion out there about why the the Grizzlies got what they wanted and other teams got the short end of the stick because they're the big dogs. And that's kind of just how it goes sometimes. And obviously the University of Memphis has a big footprint here. Also, by the way, talk about those FedEx Forum upgrades. Guess what other team plays at FedEx Forum? Tiger basketball team, which probably I think the second biggest team in the city. So it stinks. I wish they didn't have to lose out, but the Grizzlies had the leverage. They played it, and if it means that they stay in Memphis for the long haul, there's nothing more important.
No, and I think what's going to be interesting is kind of what happens down the line here, Redbirds-wise. What's the trickle-down effect of the stadium in general? Because, again, 901 FC needed their own stadium. That was a rule that was made. They didn't get it. The Redbirds have basically said, hey, we need these upgrades or else.
They need to meet standards for basically to be a minor league baseball team. Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting to see. That's going to be kind of the next step of this. I think we're going to see come in the next couple of years.
Now, I think the Redbirds renovations, I think the price tag on that is lower than a theoretical brand new 901 FC stadium would have been. And I know Paul Yon has talked about, the mayor has talked about, they're going to get that done somehow, some way. So hopefully that comes to fruition, especially with the amount of Cardinal fans in the city, the proximity to St. Louis. So I imagine that's going to get done. But you walk around Oslo Park and you're like, yeah, you can tell this place is really nice in the past. It could use a little TLC.
Could use a facelift.
Use a little TLC. All right, let's talk about the Grizzlies. They lost the other night in L.A. It was a game where they were very competitive throughout. In fact, led for a good amount of the second half. Jared was awesome the other night. Fourth quarter, just kind of LeBron James, the marvel that he is, just took over that game at the end. Anthony Davis started cooking. And the Grizzlies end up losing. Now, again, no Ja Morant, no Desmond Bane, no Vince Williams. You know the list, on and on. They did get Marcus Smart back for this game. I think he made a really big impact defensively. But just a little too much of that guy. A top 2 player of all time took over. I mean, it's crazy he's still this good. It is absurd how good he is still at this age. So Grizzlies fall to start actually on the second game of a West Coast win. This is Taylor Jenkins' postgame.
Ourselves a pretty big hole. You can't give up close to 40 points in the first quarter on the road. I thought, we let them be a little bit too comfortable, way too comfortable, honestly. In the first quarter, we were taking the ball out of the net too much. Then there was fouls, and then we couldn't run. Luckily we found our groove there in the second and third quarter, and, they made that run in the fourth quarter, and, it just was a battle, to the end. So proud of the fight, but definitely a learning opportunity here. We got to come out better in the first quarter on the road.
Again, I get to a degree. It's frustrating. You lost a winnable game on the road against a team of the Lakers. Who knows how good they end up being. I feel confident saying they're going to be in that playoff picture the whole way. But again, you're missing so many guys, and you're going against, I don't know where LeBron and AD is among the best lead duos in the league, but it's clearly very high up there.
Yeah, I mean, it's still LeBron, and it's still Anthony Davis. No matter when you play them, it's going to be difficult. What I thought was interesting watching this game was, it was different than kind of what we saw earlier in the year. Early in the year, I think you saw a team that got out to very hot starts.
Yeah.
Grizzlies got out really hot. Then you saw that third quarter lull that we were talking about. The other night was completely different. They got down like 15 early, clawed back right before halftime, took the lead in the third, like you were saying. So very different than what we've seen. Again, you're just so injury plagued. And I know it's hard to see positive sometimes in that case, but man, you look at Jalen Wells and what he is doing right now. In terms of the other rookies around the league, he looks like he's the most ready to play. Maybe besides
Zach Edey.
At times, yeah. But even then, I mean, you see guys like Wells playing well. Pippen's been fantastic early in the year. So, again, you're finding pieces, but I know Grizzlies fans don't want to find any more pieces. At a certain point, you want the pieces to play. So it's kind of just that waiting game, man. Again. I
think Zach Edey the other night, when he was on the floor, he gave Anthony Davis big-time problems. I think that was really encouraging because that, in theory, a quicker big with the skill set of Anthony Davis, you're wondering how Zach Edey's going to match up with him, gave him big-time problems. So I think that's really encouraging when you think about some of the other bigs in the Western Conference. And Anthony Davis. I kind of subtly think down the line the Grizzlies know that they're going to need an answer for Victor Wembanyama at some point, and Zach Edey could be that.
Yeah, and, I mean, you need an answer for what's going to be coming on Sunday.
Joker.
With Nikola Jokic. So, I mean, that's going to be a really interesting matchup to see how Edey guards him because, again, Jokic's not the quickest guy.
Yeah.
You would think Edey could somewhat excel in guarding him, but no one's excelled at guarding Joker in the last, 5 years?
No, and he's off to another, maybe like the craziest start out of all the season.
Ridiculous.
It is nuts. You see the clip, they asked him, have you had a bad night this year? And he was like, game 2 against the Clippers. And they're like, you had 41. He was like, oh, no, never mind that. One more thing on that Lakers game real quick. So, there's a lot of talk afterwards about kind of the rotations and the minutes and whatnot because the Grizzlies were up in the third quarter. Lakers clawed back. Did Taylor Jenkins wait too long to get his best lineups out there? And then, I even said it, tweeting during the game the other night. There was a point, there was a timeout with like 4 minutes left of the game. And I thought, Jaren's on the bench with 5 fouls. But now you got to put it back in the game. This is the moment where you put it back in the game because it's closing time. He's your best player. He's played really well. Go get him. And he was still on the bench after that timeout. He came back in like a minute later. And there's discussion about why Taylor Jenkins didn't bring Jaren Jackson back into the game sooner. And I get that. I just want to say the constant discussion and every loss being a referendum of sorts of whether the Grizzlies should keep Taylor Jenkins as their head coach. It's a little bit annoying and exhausting at this point.
I mean, yeah, it kind of gets ridiculous. Like we were just talking about, the guy's been dealt an extremely difficult hand.
Yeah.
You were trying to not only manage your lineup that you thought you were going to have opening day. You now have all these injuries once again. So you're now trying to shuffle all these pieces and see who can I play when. And you also don't want to burn out Jaren completely in November.
Yep.
Like, I understand there's 3 minutes left and the Western Conference is going to be really tight down the stretch. But at a certain point, you also want to make sure that Jaren's available down the stretch. And if you play him, the minute loads and what we saw last year, he's not going to be able to be his best when you actually need him down the stretch.
They are 7-5. I get they lost some winnable games in there against some subpar teams, but I'm trying to think. I don't think they've been blown out once this year. The second half against Houston, that was it. But they led at halftime of that game. They have not had a game this year where they have stuck it up from start to finish. I think they're second in the league in offensive efficiency, fourth in defensive efficiency. And again, he has not had his best player for 4 of those games, so a third of the game so far. They are fine. And I'm not saying Taylor Jenkins is not immune from criticism.
Yeah.
I'm not even saying Taylor Jenkins is the next coming of Phil Jackson, Greg Popovich, or even like an Eric Spoelstra or Steve Kerr in today's NBA. I'm not saying any of that. Criticism of him is fine. I've been critical of him in the past, but this idea that every time they lose, we need to discuss whether he is the coach of the future for the Grizzlies, just pump the brakes, man. And I think that a couple of things, we forget last year the record was bad, but the way they competed night in and night out showed that locker room was bought into what he was selling. And guess what? That matters. It might not be everything, but if that locker room checks out on you and they tune you out, you're done. You could be the greatest X's and O's coach in the world. If your team does not believe in you, they are done. I'll tell you to a T, if you listen to any Grizzlies player talk, especially their stars, Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr., they love Taylor Jenkins.
Yeah.
Again, that's not everything, but it does matter. I think that I give him credit for looking in the mirror this offseason and realizing some of the stuff he was doing in the past, especially when it comes to running half-court offense. Hey, it's not good enough. It's not working. Let me bring in some other minds that, in theory, in the world where he loses his job one day, could replace him. Someone like a Tuama Sasalo as his lead assistant, bringing these new offensive ideas. But he had the awareness to look in the mirror and say, this isn't working. I'm going to bring these ideas. I'm going to make this team better. And it's just like, this is a coach that, I get it, he has had talented players, but he has won 50 games twice. He has been a 2 seed in the West twice. Last season, I think, given the hand that he was dealt, probably rolled with it about as well as you could have possibly asked for. And yeah, just, again, I'm not saying he's perfect, but we are 12 games into the season, and the sky is far from falling.
Yeah, and I think people also have to remember these West Coast road trips are very hard.
Yep.
Each team has to do it that are on the eastern side of the Mississippi River. Once a year that you go on this West Coast road trip for 3 or 4 games.
Yep.
And I think everyone just wants to come out of it 500 or around there. I mean, that's all you're looking to do. So, again, like you said, 12 games in, it's November. No reason to hit the panic button yet. I think everyone's going to come back, and you're going to see the team we saw at the beginning of the year come again, maybe late December.
Yeah, if things are going legitimately badly in like February or March,
then it's time to panic.
Yeah, that's a little bit of discussion. But they're 7-5.
No, it's super early in the NBA season.
It is 7-5. Grizz fans need to chill a little bit. All right, they play the Warriors tonight. It is their NBA Cup opener. We love some NBA Cup, baby. We love some NBA Cup. Hey, man, but this is the second game in a row against, I guess we're calling it a rival. I think the Lakers, Ja Morant, officially made a rivalry. The Warriors, we know that these two teams have gone back and forth for a while. No more Klay Thompson in Golden State, but you still have Draymond Green Memphis' favorite
Fan
athlete.
favorite around here.
Memphis' favorite athlete. Apparently revealed the other day on Fred Warner's podcast that the Grizzlies offered him a 3-year, $105 million deal a couple off seasons ago. He's stayed in Golden State for like 4 years and 100. So the Grizzlies threw the money on the table. We knew the Grizzlies had offered him a deal. I don't think we knew the years and the money.
Yeah.
And Draymond made that public the other day. Warriors are off to a blazing hot start.
Yeah.
I mean, they look awesome. They are deep. We were talking about it just amongst us the other day. Steph is still Steph.
He's still
incredible.
doing his thing.
Yeah, they're playing really good defensively. The ball's hopping around. It's kind of reminded me a little bit of the beginning of that run, like
Yeah.
10 years ago, where now obviously they don't have a shooter, a secondary shooter to Steph, the caliber of Clay, but Sixer legend Buddy Hield, he's fitting in pretty well.
Yeah, it's amazing. Buddy Hield could not shoot the basketball to save his
Yep.
life last year. Gets off the Sixers and whew, world beater.
Turning it on, baby. So yeah, that's an ESPN game too. So the Grizzlies have their second straight nationally televised game.
That's good.
Don't know if you could also watch the game on FanDuel Sports Network locally, because I know people love watching Pete and Brevin and them for good reason. So I'm not sure on that. We do have some action at FedEx Forum tonight between the 2-0 Memphis Tigers
2-0 Tigers.
playing host to an Ohio team that is struggling a little bit. This will be another good test for Memphis. Where's his mouse? Oh, I'm using the wrong mouse. I apologize. It'll be a another like decent test for Memphis against an unfamiliar opponent. Now, something interesting. Penny Hardaway, kind of by choice, has not played, or he's kind of been forced to, but also by choice, has not played as many guys this year. Let's take a listen to him real quick on just the philosophy.
It's different than the past because I've tried to play a deeper bench. We're still kind of getting used to one another. And once I see something rolling, I've kind of stuck with it more this year than I have in the past, which give guys a better rhythm.
Again, it's early. The roster's a little bit thinner, but I'm sure you've figured out the past. Petty, if you're on the team, you get playing time, and you get minutes, and you're playing. And it almost became too much. His rotations were almost too big, and the subs were kind of, I don't know if random is the right word, but sporadic, and you were trying to figure out what he was thinking. This year, it's been basically 8 guys that have played, and through 2 games, it's worked.
And it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out down the stretch, because usually it's early in the year when you see teams playing 10 or 11 guys, kind of like Taylor Jenkins we were just talking about, trying to find that rotation. It seems like Penny's almost found his rotation already and is going to stick with his guns. I'm just interested to see how it plays out. Long season.
He did also say he left the door open that they could add a guy in the portal as well.
There's one spot.
Obviously, I think they have 2 actually, because they have one open going into the season, and then Tyreke
You're
Smith
right. Yep.
hit the portal the day of the season opener. Now, Petty said they need to see who actually gets in the portal first, because that is still TBD and kind of an open-ended question. But I think I would like to see them add one more guy, just because when you're rolling with 8,
it's tough, man.
If one guy gets hurt now, so you're real thin, real thin. So, yeah, tonight against Ohio, I know you want to hit on that Maui Invitational next week, starting against UConn. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, I mean, you really get to see kind of what this team is. They started off really slow against Missouri, picked it up in the second half, got a good win out west at UNLV. Which
Same thing, though. It's slow first half, great second half.
But that UNLV team is going to be good out in Mountain West, which is a very slept-on basketball conference. So, again, Ohio tonight, and then I think they have one more before the Maui Invitational, if I'm not mistaken, against someone. But I might be wrong. Again, it's all going to be about kind of what team shows up. Against a team like UConn, you can't come out to slow starts. And the rest of that Maui Invitational group is stacked. I mean, you got some of the best blue bloods in the country. So, again, it's early, but I think Tiger fans, you got to like the resilience, at least from a Memphis team where last year there was no resilience whatsoever.
San Francisco next Thursday on the road before they hit Maui. So, yeah, that's going to be a good test as well. I forgot about that because the Gales are usually those aren't the Gales, excuse me. But San Francisco is usually a pretty solid team in that conference as well. The Dons, that's what it is. Yeah. So, that'll be a good test for them as well. So, tonight at FedEx Forum, and then that'll be the last time they're home for a good little bit. I think until the beginning of December against Louisiana Tech, I want to say.
It's going to be after Thanksgiving for sure.
Because they'll be coming back from Maui after that. All right, we only got a couple minutes left. Let's hit on college football real quick. The Memphis football team, their last home game of the regular season, last home game of the year tomorrow, senior day against UAB. Now, obviously, a lot of players are going to be honored. The headliner is Seth Hennigan, 4 years as a starting quarterback. It's his last dance at Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium tomorrow night. Ryan Silverfield hit on earlier this week just the growth of Hennigan and how much he's meant to the program. It was a good answer.
So everybody wants to talk about on the field, Seth, right? Not only did he develop, right, understanding this offense and then understanding college defenses and all those things. Like on the field, we can talk for hours about his growth and development. But I think you just talk about the maturation of a 17-year-old, right? Like think about this, 17-year-old. I'll call him a boy when he got here to a young man and what he's been able to do and how he's been able to grow. I think the nice thing is like the media, the city, the fans have got to see him grow literally right before his eyes. I mean, 175 pounds, soaking wet when he got here and couldn't grow facial hair. Now he's got this, whatever he's trying to grow on his face, and he'll tell you he's a young adult. So that's been fun, and just to watch that and to see how he continues to mature and grow. Those are the special things, But his growth here, I think also, and I've mentioned this in the past. Like obviously, my first year as the head coach here, we had a guy named Brady White, a 25-year-old quarterback that fans knew that had success, was in the Cotton Bowl, and then all of a sudden we have a 17-year-old. It's a big drastic difference in those quarterbacks, and what I appreciate about that, first couple of years, and myself included, right? We both took bumps. Like, you sure you're the right guy? Like Seth took some bumps. Like, hey, you sure this guy's the right quarterback to lead this program? And I think, has it always been perfect? No, but we've seen him mature and grow and be able to continue to do a lot of great things for this program and for this community.
Now, Seth said himself this week, he was kind of reflecting on his career as a Tiger. He said, no championship, that's probably going to haunt him forever, which I get it. It's going to be interesting to compare him to the likes of Brady White, who took them to a Cotton Bowl, Riley Ferguson, who had a really good 2 years here, Paxton Lynch, who was a first-round pick coming out of here.
Yeah.
Those discussions down the road are going to be fun. Seth is obviously the program's all-time leader in passing yards, passing touchdowns.
Completion percentage.
Yeah, just everything. And obviously the 4-year starting quarterback in today's day and age of college football is incredibly rare. I mean, who knows when we're going to see it again? And he's had chances to leave, make more NIL money, potentially go to bigger programs, and he stuck it out all 4 years at Memphis. So I think he'll always be remembered for his loyalty. I've got to know Seth relatively well the last couple of years, just interviewing him a bunch of times, interacting with him. First-class kid, has really been a great representative of the program. I think that he's going to get a great ovation tomorrow night as part of the Senior Day festivities. And, he's just always been about the right stuff. So however he's thought of in terms of football player, I just know that the University of Memphis was very lucky to have him the last 4 years. Still got a couple games left, UAB and then the Tulane game and then a bowl game. But tomorrow night will be the last time he plays in front of the fans in Memphis. So looking forward to seeing what that reception is like, because it should be a good one.
Yeah, you never know. Could be back in the Liberty Bowl.
I don't think it's going to have 2 years in a row, but it could. You never know. So shout out to Seth and the rest of the seniors that are going to be honored tomorrow night, because it's going to be a big group of them. Man, you still buzzing after last Saturday or what?
Oh, my God. What a win for the Ole Miss Rebels, man. You look at that game, and you just saw what this team was billed to be preseason. Yeah. Preseason, there was all that hype, number 6 in the country, all that. And you finally saw it click, especially on defense.
Yeah.
You won in the trenches against a team that dominates everyone in the trenches, year in and year out. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see kind of where the cookie crumbles here down the stretch, because Tennessee-Georgia is a big one this week for Tennessee and Ole Miss. And
Georgia.
I mean, Georgia loses and they're out.
Probably.
Which is just unheard of to think maybe 3 weeks ago that we'd be talking about this. But, yeah, I mean, up front, Princely was fantastic. Sunterry Perkins was fantastic. Jared Ivey, Walter Nolan, you're finally starting to see it all is clicking on the defensive front. And you saw domination up front. You saw Chris Paul Jr. in the linebacker core. John Saunders in the back making plays. Mm-hmm. You saw everyone on defense kind of coming together for the first time. Offense wasn't great, but it wasn't bad, and they didn't turn the ball over.
Ed Jackson was playing on a bum ankle for a lot of the game.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you'd still like to run the ball more, but I feel like at this point in the year, you're not going to be able to run the ball. So I think, down the stretch, it's going to be Jackson. It's going to be when Trey Harris comes back.
Yeah, I was going to say, you won that game without him, too.
If Trey Harris comes back, and there's been a lot of people talking about he might be done for the year now with the groin, so... Yeah, I mean, again, a lot to like, and in what was probably the biggest win in close to school history. I mean, the
really
Alabama games are up there too, but this set you up to go to the postseason. So
yeah, and now on a bye this week, they go to the Swamp next week. DJ Lagway should play. I know Billy Napier said he's going to play this week, so that makes that game a little bit more interesting.
Trickier.
But in theory, they are relatively heavy favorites to win their last 2 games of the regular season. And if they do that, at this point, it's kind of hard to envision how they don't make it.
Yeah, The Athletic has them, if they win these next 2 games, at an 83% chance to make the playoffs. So, again, it's all about how this shuffles from here. Let's say Georgia beats Tennessee.
Yep.
Where does Tennessee fall? Because you can't put Georgia above Ole Miss now.
Nope.
So Tennessee is going to have to fall behind both of them.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens in 2 weeks with Ohio State, Indiana. Indiana, a lot of talk about their schedule. If they lose in a blowout game, how far do they fall? So if you're an Ole Miss fan, you're cheering for teams like Indiana to lose, BYU to lose, Tennessee to lose, things like that.
Just chaos.
Just to really set yourself up, because the SEC, you don't know how things are going to play out down the stretch. You have no idea.
I think this year has been the perfect collision course of expanded college football playoff and a year where there is so much parity and there is no real dominant team that kind of stands above the rest. I mean, the closest you get is probably Oregon.
Maybe.
Yeah, but I don't even think they're like
but
super
early in the year,
top.
that was a team that beat Boise State on 3 special team scores by 7.
Yeah.
And a team that beat Idaho by 7. So they've shown weak links too. And then that Texas-Arkansas game
sneaky
is no slouch because Texas has not been. There's a lot of people talking about Texas' schedule. Who have they played? I mean, their best win so far is at Vanderbilt. And I mean, that's not exactly something to write home about. I know Vanderbilt's better, but
it's not a signature win.
Yeah, I mean, Texas's only ranked game was against Georgia, and they got manhandled up front.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to hit on Ole Miss too, real quick. I remember Lane talking last year. I think after they got destroyed by Georgia last season, I remember his post-game presser. He was talking about, well, if we want to compete with them, we need more dudes, and he was specifically talking about dudes in the trenches on the offensive and the defensive line, because the biggest difference between Ole Miss last year and the Georgias and the Alabamas and whatnot was size in the trenches, size and athleticism up front.
Yeah.
And you could tell that Lane and that staff made a point this offseason. They were going to get more of those guys that were playing for Georgia and Alabama and bring them to Oxford and see where the chips fall after that. And it's worked out. And Saturday was the pinnacle of that. You finally have guys that can match up with those premier programs in the trenches, and you see the results.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, it's all about up front. It's been that way for years with them.
Yeah.
You beat Alabama occasionally on a lucky ball off a helmet or something. It was a game where you didn't need anything weird to happen to win. You were just able to dominate up front. And Georgia, I mean, the question marks are going to continue to surround them as we go down the stretch because Carson Beck looks shaky.
Listen, man. If I'm an NFL GM, I'm interested in 2 quarterbacks out of this class, Shedeur Sanders and maybe Cam Ward. I'm good on Carson Beck, Drew Aller, Quinn Ewers, the rest of them.
The rest.
All right, real quick, let's speak because we got to get out of here pretty quickly. NFL Week 11 is underway. Your boys pick it. So I was doing play-by-play of the Northwest Mississippi Community College basketball men's and women's teams last night. So I got home, and I ended up watching the highlights. So Eagles beat the Commanders. The scoreboard says it was a commanding win. No pun intended. It was not.
No, I mean, the first half, it was definitely a dogfight. Eagles didn't look great coming out the stretch. The Eagles have not looked great all year coming out of the start of the game. But then again, the Commanders didn't look great either. I think the Eagles' defense just kind of wore on the Commanders a little bit. They didn't let Jaden Daniels get out of the pocket.
Let me hype you up real quick. Let me tee you up. Quinyon Mitchell. Remember the name.
Yeah, I've been saying it for weeks.
He clapped Terry McLaurin last night.
Saying it for weeks. I mean, there's that video of him and Mike Evans earlier in the year, and him just jawing off to Mike Evans the entire time. Mike Evans like, do you know who I am? He's like, I don't care who you are. So, I mean, he's been doing
That's the type of irrational quarterback confidence you need to be a great quarterback.
Oh, you have to, because you have to forget immediately. And then it was just the Saquon Barkley show in the second half. He is superhuman, unbelievable.
I've come around. Running backs, star running backs definitely matter.
They deserve the money.
Because Saquon has added dimensions to this offense that hasn't really been there before.
Yeah.
I was going to say, AJ was cooking early, didn't end up with a huge night, did he?
No, I mean, they just they moved away from throwing the ball in the second half. I mean, Saquon was getting just chunks and chunks of yardage. I mean, if you don't need to, stick it with them. There was a big play down the stretch. Dallas Goedert, a fumble down the sideline.
That Calcaterra jumped on,
And crazy hustle play there.
This Sunday has a bunch of really good games. Real quick on the Eagles, on that game as well. I think, from what I've been reading, it sounds like, I'm curious to see what Jaden Daniels looks like after this mini-bye, because it sounds like, you read the tea leaves, that rib injury from a couple weeks ago is bothering him, and it probably affected him last night. So 10 days off, I'm curious what that looks like.
They don't get their bye until week 14.
Week 14,
which is pretty unbelievable to be that late.
There are some very good games on the schedule this week. Ravens Steelers, I mean, that could decide the AFC North. That game is in Pittsburgh. Falcons Broncos
is a fun game.
Yeah, it's sneakily going to be competitive. The Broncos are favorites too, which is wild. And then of course we've got Chiefs Bills, which is going to be, I mean, that's kind of.
I mean, those last three right there, Seahawks Niners is an enormous game in the NFC West.
Yep. And then Bengals Chargers. Hey, listen, man.
The Chargers, Jim Harbaugh can coach, man.
Well, and as a longtime supporter against the naysayers of Justin Herbert, you finally see, you get the man of defense, you get the man of running game, and he doesn't have to be Superman anymore. All of a sudden, he looks like the kind of quarterback that his believers, like me, have believed he could be.
Yeah, and I mean, Jim Harbaugh, it's unbelievable. His first year in the NFL, he has turned them into like a defensive, honed-in machine, which was so far from what the Chargers were last year. It's unbelievable how 1 year you can reshape a defense like that. In the NFL, it's very hard to do.
That's huge for the Bengals, too. As the Bengals lose, their playoff hopes are looking very shaky.
Yeah.
And then the battle for Texas is, by the way, Bengals-Chargers, you can watch here on Action News 5 Sunday night. Monday Night Football is frankly a garbage game. I think the Texans walk all over the Cowboys.
Yeah, Cowboys are done.
The Cooper Rush show.
Well, at least the sun will be set by then, so there's no glare, thank God.
Yeah, maybe CeeDee Lamb can catch the ball at that point. All right, we got to get out of here a second. I'm ignoring your Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson.
Make a pick before we get off.
It's rigged, Jake Paul.
Well, Jake Paul's going to win because Mike Tyson's 50.
It's rigged.
Oh, my God.
Jake Paul's going to win.
No trivia, so we got to talk about that instead.
That is all the acknowledgement you were getting from me on Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. All right, we got to go so they can set up our 3:30 show. Friday Football Fever coming up tonight at 10. That's Griffin Demaray. I am Matt Enfield. Peace out. We'll see you later.